Hello, I'm Nicole Parker. I'm a full-time fertility care practitioner working in the field of natural fertility management, infertility and women's health care. I teach the Creighton Model FertilityCare charting system and work alongside medical doctors trained in the new reproductive science of naprotechnology. Both the Creighton model and naprotechnology have been extensively developed at the Institute for the Study of Human Reproduction. This DVD is to specifically introduce you to the Creighton model, an incredibly empowering tool to help women and couples truly, and I mean truly, take charge of their fertility, both with confidence and knowledge. The main focus of this DVD will be in assisting couples to use this information for family planning purposes. That is, to naturally avoid or achieve pregnancy.
I wanted to do something that is natural and common sense, not just for my body, but also on an emotional level, something that will connect us in our relationship.
And there's always a real just interest and I think just fascination that natural family planning is a viable option for today's woman.
It's a very methodical, very scientific method, and it really grabbed my respect straight away.
It's only now that we've realised how much we didn't know before using the method.
The charting's quite exciting because you can see patterns develop and you become more sensitive to the way that your body is functioning.
So join me and let's delve deeper into this incredibly fascinating area. There are two main areas that we'll be looking at. First of all, natural human fertility, and secondly, the actual charting of the menstrual cycle for family planning purposes. Everyone has a different level of awareness of their own fertility and a different understanding of how to manage their fertility in a healthy way.
I knew that there was something that took place in my body, but all I could remember from school was going through a model of, the genital area and nothing much else. Nothing was really said about what it meant, about how to really, about what it meant as part of your body, to really understand yourself. And I just really felt that as a young single woman at the time, that I just really wanted to find out more about how I worked.
I had some knowledge of the human body, but not really a very practical understanding of how to navigate around our fertility and understand our fertility. So it really helped with that. So when we started using the system, when we got married, we found it really just brought light into an area that was darkness.
And we came to learn about the Creighton method 4 years ago as a couple, although I'd heard about it sooner. And we decided to get information about it and learn about it as a couple for instruction a good year before we actually got engaged, actually. So although it wasn't part of our marriage preparation, in a way it was.
I didn't know about the Creighton's model until I was told about it from someone at my church, and I thought that I wanted to find out more about it.
The reason I started charting was I basically found out what the pill was doing to my body, and I wanted to come off.
I think it was about knowing where the window of fertility was. It was fairly vague. I think there was some sense that there was something going on, because obviously you do know the reproductive cycle, but in terms of how that actually takes place, how it manifests itself in your own body, I wouldn't say I was very aware of that. So natural fertility management really helped me to develop an awareness and also an appreciation of what that actually meant.
Some basic facts about family planning. Firstly, family planning should be an integral part of a couple's relationship. It really is a privilege and a responsibility of a couple to lovingly decide when to have children and how many to have. Now, an ideal method of family planning should be a few things. Firstly, it should be highly effective. It should have no long or short-term side effects. It should not be expensive. It should be morally and aesthetically acceptable to both partners. And it shouldn't cause any damage or harm to one's natural fertility. Now, a true method of family planning should enable a couple to do two things, either avoid or achieve pregnancy. Artificial contraceptive measures purely focus on enabling a couple to avoid pregnancy, but a true method should allow a couple to do both, and the couple simply switch or reverse the use of the method according to their own intentions, which can change over time. Of course, it is important to accept that every system of family planning does have a pregnancy rate. There really is no such thing as a 100% guarantee that conception will not occur if you engage in sexual activity. Many people are surprised at this information. There are many benefits to using a natural fertility management system. Firstly, there is no suppression or impairment to one's natural fertility. It is medically safe, involves no barriers or devices, encourages deeper bonding and communication between a couple, and enables respect and understanding of one's own fertility. It's incredibly empowering for a woman to be able to chart her menstrual cycle, and it enables shared responsibility of family planning between a couple. It is highly reliable. In terms of avoiding pregnancy, the Creighton model is 99.5% effective in doing so. It is also 98% effective in assisting couples with normal fertility to achieve a pregnancy.
All sorts of wonderful benefits from using the Creighton model. I think probably one of the most important for us has been the cooperation that it promotes between us. Our level of communication has just deepened so much since we've been married and using the method, because we're just in constant dialogue about the whole process of our fertility. And I think for me personally, as the man, one of the really important benefits for me is that we can also be tracking Leona's health through the method, and that I have a part to play in that as well.
Initially, when I introduced the charting method to Mike, it was a little scary to think about doing it, but once I'd broken the ice, he was really understanding, and actually I think it's played a big part in the deepening of our communication as a couple. It's meant that it's not been a subject off limits or a subject that we don't understand. It's been something we've been able to share together, and also Mike has been able to ask me questions about it, so it's really opened up the channels of communication.
When couples start off using the system, so when they get married and they decide they want to use the system, they often think that maybe they want to achieve a pregnancy straight away, or maybe they want to wait for a while and we'll try later. But to be honest, none of us really knows our fertility and whether it will be easy or not. And we knew that we wanted to avoid a pregnancy for a little while, while we enjoyed being married and got to know each other and all the financial issues and that sort of thing. And we were absolutely amazed, although we came to learn the system as a method to, we wanted to use it to avoid initially. We were so pleased to find out that it can be used as a method to not only avoid a pregnancy, but also it can be used to achieve a pregnancy. And also we gained so much understanding about the wide variety of problems that can be picked up with just being able to track the cycles. So it has a wide variety of applications to help diagnose with and treat gynaecological problems. So you can be aware of these problems perhaps before even your doctor would pick it up.
The benefits I've found from it is just knowing where Sophie is and where we stand every month as well. I think it's wonderful to be able to, I think women are given as, or we think of women as a big mystery to us. And although I think women are still very much a mystery, it's nice to just have a little bit of input from the chart and to be able to, I mean, at certain times of the month, you know, Sophie might be a bit more cuddly and snuggle up a little bit more, and I kind of can look at the chart and I can say, well, that's where we are now. Or, you know, when Sophie's menstruating, it's, you know, she needs a different sort of cuddle, and it's nice to be able to, you know, I think women was portrayed in the media a lot that men need to be intuitive towards women, but we're not. You know, we can't read minds, and you know, it's about growing in that relationship. And I think having a chart in front of you that says, well, this is where my wife is, just enables you to actually make those decisions a lot easier, and you don't have to have such a hard time. You can just go in for the conservative little cuddle and kind cuddle.
I've experience of friends being treated with infertility problems where they've had difficulty conceiving or miscarriages, and where mainstream gynaecology has often said there's nothing wrong, Creighton's been able to pick up straight away, even before, perhaps before some of them have gone on to have problems. They've been able to pick up that they are in this high-risk group. So we're completely delighted to be using the system for the range of applications it has.
So let's look at the Creighton Model system of charting. The Creighton Model helps couples to be able to make natural reproductive choices, and also to be able to monitor and then evaluate a woman's reproductive health. The Creighton Model enables responsible parenthood instruction for either avoiding pregnancy, achieving pregnancy, knowing how to time conception, the accurate dating of pregnancy, learning how to track the menstrual cycle, SPICE instruction, which is a holistic way in which the Creighton Model is taught, and marital bonding. The Creighton Model also enables health monitoring and evaluation to assist with various medical problems, including infertility, miscarriage, maintaining pregnancy, irregular cycles, various hormone problems, premenstrual syndrome, ovarian cysts, unusual bleeding, and the effects of stress. The Creighton Model is tailor-made for each woman and each couple and can be used with both regular and irregular cycles, anovulatory cycles, where a woman is not actually releasing an egg each month, during the premenopausal time, for women coming off the pill, and during breastfeeding. It can be used in any situation through one's entire reproductive life. The system itself is based on very solid scientific and educational research, on the observation and tracking of various biological markers, and it's easy to learn and easy to understand. So let's look at some basic anatomy and physiology. Men are always fertile. From the age of 12 or 13, a man's fertility begins and remains with him almost the rest of his life. Of course, men can be or become subfertile or infertile, but on the whole, men produce sperm every day. Of course, the male cell of human reproduction is the sperm. It's in the head region that the DNA material is contained, and the tail gives the sperm its ability to actually move through the cervix of the woman. With any male fertility problem, one of the first tests that's conducted is a seminal fluid analysis. And in this test, 3 things would be tested for: the count of the sperm in a particular sample, the movement or motility, and the morphology, any abnormal shape to the sperm. The sperm are produced in the testicles. They travel up through the vas deferens, down through the urethra to the outside of the body. The reason the male's genitalia is on the outside of the body is because sperm are so sensitive to heat. So it is important that men avoid very hot baths, hot spas, tight clothing, or anything that can overheat the testicular area and damage sperm production. Now, women are at most times infertile. In an entire month, there are only a few days of fertility that actually exist in the cycle. But sadly, most women have no idea where their fertility starts, where it finishes, where that window of fertility actually exists, or where they actually ovulate. The main organs for the female include the uterus or the womb, the cervix, the vagina. Either side are the ovaries, which regulate the menstrual cycle and produce the various hormones each month, and a fallopian tube either side. The uterus really is a big, thick muscle with a cavity in the middle, the uterine cavity. Below this is the cervix, and in the cervical crypts, which line the cervix, cervical mucus is produced. Now this is the main sign of the woman's fertility. It's produced here in the cervix, but it's visible here at the opening of the vagina. Not all women have regular cycles. Some have short and some have long. But whether a woman has short, regular or long cycles, the same phases of the menstrual cycle occur. A menstrual cycle begins here on day 1 when the bleeding begins. It continues through until ovulation when the egg is released, and then continues on until the end of the month, until the bleeding begins again. A short cycle is considered anything less than 23 days. A regular cycle is anything from 23 to 38 days, and a long cycle is anything from 38 days onwards. In all 3 cycles, the same pattern occurs. In the beginning, there are a number of days of bleeding. Following this, there are a number of days of dryness and infertility. What should then be observed is a number of days of mucus production leading up to the point of ovulation when the egg is released. The mucus production is like an advance indicator to the woman that she's coming up to the point of ovulation. After ovulation, the mucus dries up and the woman returns to a period of dryness and infertility until the end of the month. The post-ovulation phase is an incredibly stable part of the cycle, on average about 13 days. The variable part of the month is the first part of the month, and this is why we have short, regular and long cycles. If a woman ovulates earlier in the month, she has a short pre-ovulation phase. If for some reason there is a lot of stress, this can delay ovulation and cause the pre-ovulatory phase to be longer than normal. But the post-ovulation phase remains stable, and as long as it's somewhere between 9 to 17 days, it's considered normal. Women who suffer from premenstrual syndrome and recurrent miscarriage frequently observe a short post-ovulation phase of less than 9 days. Women who observe a longer than 17-day post-ovulation phase are often women who suffer from an ovulation condition called polycystic ovary disease. So it's possible that by tracking the menstrual cycle, we can pick up on problems such as miscarriage and polycystic ovary syndrome ahead of time and have these conditions treated effectively. Every month, the ovulation cycle should be occurring. When a woman's born, she's born with her whole supply of eggs, and at the beginning of each month, one tiny egg is selected to grow and develop inside a follicle. This developing follicle produces the hormone estrogen. The follicle should reach a nice mature size. Here we can see the ovum or the egg ready to be released. The day the egg is released is the day of ovulation, and once this occurs, the follicle, which is now empty, collapses, and in the second part of the month, it's called a corpus luteum and begins to produce a different hormone, progesterone. In the follicle phase, the first part of the month, estrogen is responsible for the follicle maturing, growing and developing. It helps with ovulation, and it's the same hormone that stimulates the crypts in the cervix to make the cervical mucus. In the second part of the month, progesterone has the main role of beginning to thicken the lining of the womb in anticipation of a pregnancy and implantation. So the changes in the lining of the uterus occur in response to what is happening within the ovaries. So we have the follicle developing, ovulation, and the luteal phase. And in direct response to this, we see the changes in the lining of the uterus. In the beginning of the month is the menstrual phase, the days of bleeding or menstruation. Following the bleeding days is a time of thickening of the uterine wall. This is what we call the proliferation phase. At some point, the woman should then ovulate. And following ovulation, the lining of the womb becomes even thicker. We call this the secretory phase. And this is a time when the womb begins to secrete a nice nutritious fluid, getting ready for a possible implantation. Of course, if the woman conceives around about this time, the womb continues to thicken for the next 9 months. If conception doesn't happen, or the woman miscarries, she bleeds and she goes back to the beginning of the cycle. And generally speaking, this all works like clockwork. You may or may not be aware that ovulation only occurs on 1 day each cycle. This day of ovulation is a critical day for couples to pinpoint. It is possible to ovulate more than once. If a woman ovulates 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 eggs are released, and if those eggs are fertilized, this is how we end up with twins and triplets. But even when multiple ovulations happen, they still happen in the same 24-hour period. The egg only lives for a short time if it's not fertilized, somewhere between 12 to 24 hours. The sperm need the mucus to survive. Cervical mucus nourishes the sperm, keeps the sperm alive, acts like a filter to try and filter out abnormal sperm, and works like a medium or a carrier in the cervix, so the sperm can actually pass through the cervix down into the fallopian tubes. It's the main sign of the woman's fertility. Sperm die rapidly within hours without mucus. But sperm with good mucus can live for somewhere between 3 to 5 days, depending on the quality of the woman's mucus. Here we can see a map of the cervix. The cervix really is a biological valve. Throughout the month, it opens and it closes. The reason why most of the month a woman cannot get pregnant is because her cervix, as a valve, is shut. At this time, she produces a type of mucus called type G. We can see here that this type of mucus under a microscope is incredibly thick and dense and prevents sperm entry. Type G mucus here in the cervix works like a plug to prevent sperm entry. At the opening of the vagina, what the woman notices is dry days. This is a time of infertility. What should happen around ovulation time is the cervix begins to open. At this time, the woman produces type E mucus. It looks completely different to the type G under a microscope. Type E mucus is arranged into long, parallel channels that guide the sperm through and filter out abnormal sperm. Now this type of mucus, when it's produced in the cervix, is visible here at the opening of the vagina. So these fertile days are the mucus days. Here we can see changes in the flow of the cervical mucus around the time of ovulation. So we can see the biological valve actually working in reality. This first picture shows the cervix 4 days before the peak day, or 4 days before ovulation, and we can see the cervix is closed. On the peak day, which is usually the day the woman ovulates, we can see the cervix is not only open, but there's a good flow of cervical mucus. 1 day after the peak, 1 day after ovulation, the cervix is already beginning to close. And 4 days after peak, the cervix is completely closed. Remember, all observations of the Creighton model are external. There is no need to do any internal observations. Most women have no idea that their cervix is a biological valve and that it changes throughout the month. This is how natural fertility management is possible. So our fertility depends on 3 things: healthy sperm, good eggs, and good cervical mucus. Many people mistakenly think that to conceive, one needs good sperm and good eggs, but without the presence of mucus, conception is not possible. Of course, conception is the very beginning of human life, where one sperm is able to break through the outside of the egg and conception occurs. The ovary releases an egg into the end of the fallopian tube. If it's a fertile time in the month, the sperm can swim through the cervix, through the uterus, down the fallopian tube, and meet the egg here at the end of the fallopian tube. This is where conception occurs. It then takes 6 days for the embryo to travel from the end of the tube to this point here, at which time it is growing and developing. And somewhere between day 6 and day 9, the embryo comes into the uterine cavity and tries to implant. If the lining of the womb is thick enough, this implantation process is normally successful. If the womb is too thin, then a woman can have an early miscarriage without even knowing. At this point, it's useful to point out how the oral contraceptive pill works. There are 3 ways that the pill works. The first thing the pill tries to do is to shut off the activity of the ovary and stop ovulation. The second way the pill works is to try and make the cervical mucus here hostile to sperm. These 2 ways of working are what we call contraceptive, preventing conception. Sometimes a woman still gets pregnant even though she takes the pill correctly. The third way the pill tries to work is to make the womb lining very thin, so that if pregnancy does occur, the embryo can't implant into the lining of the womb. This is what we call the abortifacient effect of the contraceptive pill. Unfortunately, all forms of the pill work in this way. And that's why a woman who takes the pill often has a shorter and lighter period, because the pill tries to prevent the womb from thickening each month. Over a period of time, the thinning of the womb lining can cause wear and tear on the uterine cavity, which can cause problems later on.
I was put on the pill quite an early age, about 13, 14, by the doctors, because I'd had quite painful periods for some time. But it was only much later in my 20s when I found out just what the pill does to my body and how it works against my natural fertility. And once I found those facts out, I decided that I wanted to come off the pill, and at that time I didn't know what would be an alternative for helping my my health problems and my menstrual cycles.
When you're young, you just go on the pill because everybody else does, not understanding the full implications that it has on your body.
For me, the best way to be able to express our love for each other is completely naturally, without the use of barriers or pills that have many side effects So that was definitely something that we didn't want to use at all. And if you can have the degree of confidence that you can do with the Creighton method and still be able to use the system with confidence, then why use anything else?
For me, artificial contraception was really not an option. I'd heard a lot of negative things about it, and I certainly didn't want to just go with the flow. It wasn't something that I felt was right for my body, and I really did want something that was a natural method that wasn't going to suppress my fertility in any way, and that was just going to allow me to be me.
A good friend of mine just happened to be a Creighton Model expert, and she introduced me to the natural family planning and showed me what it could do for me just as a single woman as well.
So it's important to allow our bodies to work as they were designed to work. By 16 weeks of age, the placenta starts to take over the production of the hormone progesterone to maintain the lining of the womb. Now, menstruation is an important and healthy part of a woman's fertility. This is a time when the lining of the womb is removed. It's a sloughing of the lining tissue. And it's really important that it occurs every month, because it's like a monthly cleansing of the uterine cavity. When this doesn't occur on a regular basis, it usually indicates a hormone problem and should be addressed, not by taking the pill, but by finding the underlying reason why the cycle is irregular or the periods are abnormal. Couples need to know that pregnancy can result from any genital contact on days of fertility, even without penetration or ejaculation. This is what we call a contact pregnancy, somewhere where the mucus and the sperm come into contact, whether it's hand to genital contact or close genital contact, pregnancy can result. So in avoiding pregnancy, all natural systems work by avoiding what we call genital contact during the few days that are considered fertile each month. So let's look at the Creighton model system and the tracking process. Here we can see a menstrual cycle. At the beginning of the month is the time of menstruation. A normal menstrual bleed should be between 3 and 7 days, with at least one heavy day and going from heavy to light. Following menstruation are the dry days, which are infertile. Then the development of the mucus symptom begins. For the first day or two, the mucus is often sticky and cloudy. As the woman's hormone levels rise up, over these next few days, the mucus should become stretchy, clear, and may even feel lubricative. Everything leads up to the peak day. This is usually the day the woman ovulates. And the peak day is the very last day that a woman observes any mucus that is either clear, lubricative, or stretchy. Straight after ovulation, there is a dramatic drop-off in the hormone levels and a sudden change in the cervical mucus. The mucus dries up. This dramatic change that happens the day after the peak day is a visible change that all women can detect. The next 3 days are considered fertile because ovulation can still occur up to 3 days post-peak. However, 90% of the time it is the peak day that the woman ovulates. Following the peak day, the rest of the cycle from this point onwards is normally dry and infertile. So a woman's fertility begins here on the first day of mucus and continues through until 3 days post-peak. You may be wondering why the menstrual time is a time of potential fertility. Can you get pregnant during the period? The answer to this is yes. It is possible for a woman to ovulate earlier in the month. This happens more as a woman nears menopause. The peak day occurs earlier in the month, and the mucus symptom develops prior to that. So it's possible for the woman to start producing mucus during the last days of her period. In order for women to detect whether this is happening or not, all women are advised to start looking for cervical mucus on the light and the very light days of menstruation. Most of the time, a woman will observe dryness and infertility. But if mucus is observed on these days, then the woman is having an early ovulation. And this is very important whether a couple are using the method to avoid or achieve pregnancy. So how do you check for these biological markers? There are 3 simple steps. Step 1 involves wiping the opening of the vagina. With a flat layer of toilet paper, the woman wipes from front to back, feeling for a sensation of lubrication. Imagine egg white on the back of your hand, wiping with a tissue. It's a very obvious slimy, slippery feeling. Step 2 is to observe the tissue. If there's something on there, the woman continues on to step 3. She finger tests whatever's observed and looks for 2 simple things: the stretch of the mucus and the colour. It's important that a woman begins to check according to a routine, and this is explained in the teaching process of learning the Creighton model. Checking routinely throughout the day is an important part of using the system accurately. So there are 3 C's to remember: the colour of the mucus, the consistency or the stretch, the dramatic change that happens after ovulation, and the sensation that the woman feels as she wipes with the tissue from front to back.
Learning to chart was a complete eye-opener. I felt very empowered by doing it. It really helped put me in charge of my fertility, of my body. I understood myself much better. It was just really fascinating, and it really was like opening a window onto a part of myself that had been working perfectly but had been hidden before.
It is actually very empowering to know when you're fertile and when you're not fertile.
Here we can see a chart. There are 6 months worth of charting on each FertilityCare chart. You can see numbers 1 to 35 up the top. Couples are advised to chart at the end of each day and just record the most fertile sign of the day. In the top box here, they put a particular stamp or sticker, and underneath a description of the most fertile sign of the day. The stamping system is simple. Any bleeding is charted with a red sticker. This may be menstrual bleeding. It could be unusual bleeding in the middle of the month. Dry days are charted with green stickers to indicate infertility. All mucus is charted with a white baby. The couple become confident with the peak day, which is usually the day the woman ovulates, and then the count of 3 begins. Remember, this is a time when the woman can still ovulate. Following this count of 3, the woman returns to dryness, and green stamps indicate this time of infertility. Underneath, a simple description is written. Here we can see a progression of a chart. This particular couple have charted 5 days of bleeding, 2 heavy, 2 moderate, and a light day. And you can see on this light day, the woman has started to observe for mucus, and she's noted that she was dry and infertile. The next 4 days, from day 6 to day 9, continue to be dry and infertile. Fertility for this particular woman begins on day 10. She observes mucus that's sticky and cloudy. Day 11 has a bit more stretch. It's what we call tachy-cloudy. It progresses up to day 13 and 14, being clear, stretchy, and now lubricative. As the hormones rise up, so does the quality and the quantity of the mucus. Day 14 is the last day that the woman observes clear or stretchy or lubricative mucus. The very next day, day 15, the mucus starts to change back to sticky, cloudy, or what we call non-peak mucus. So there's a dramatic change the day after the peak day. You can see days 16 and 17 are dry days, but they're still regarded as fertile because of the potential for ovulation to occur. And then the rest of the month is dry and infertile. This is a healthy, textbook-looking cycle. You can see the cycle is 28 days, 5 days of bleeding, which is normal, a couple of heavy days, which is important, and going from heavy to light. The mucus buildup is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days long, which would indicate good hormone function. She's happening to ovulate on day 14, and the post-peak phase from here until the end is 14 days long, which again indicates good hormone function. This same woman has charted 2 more cycles. These are not consecutive cycles. The first cycle is the one we've just looked at. The second cycle is to indicate what happens when a woman has an early ovulation. You can see the window of fertility has shifted forward, and this woman has ovulated around day 9 of the menstrual cycle. The third cycle is a classic example of a cycle where a woman experiences acute stress during the mucus buildup. This has resulted in a delay in ovulation until about day 20 of her cycle. You can see, however, that the post-peak phase from day 1 after peak until the end of the month is the very stable part of the month, and this figure at the end indicates this stability. The pre-peak phase from day 1 of the cycle up to and including the peak day is the variable part of the month, and the figure on the left-hand side indicates this variability. So it's possible to observe these things from month to month, and for the woman to tune into what's happening with her body as each cycle unfolds. Here is an example of a woman having a long cycle, 40 days long. You can see the couple are using the method to avoid pregnancy, selectively having intercourse, or the I, on days of infertility. For this particular woman, her fertility started on day 23 and continued through until day 32, with ovulation happening around day 29. Certainly if this couple were trying to achieve pregnancy, it would be extremely difficult to do so if the woman was not tracking her fertility. This chart shows a woman who's breastfeeding, and this is a very interesting time in the woman's reproductive life. Breastfeeding is a time when a woman produces a hormone prolactin, which suppresses ovulation. So after giving birth, if a woman begins to chart her fertility, what she notices is long periods of dryness and infertility, with patches of mucus that come and go. This particular couple are using the method to avoid pregnancy, selectively using infertile days for intercourse. You can see here that there is an attempt towards an ovulation event, and a second attempt occurs, followed by a period. It is important to remember that a woman can ovulate before her first period. When a woman's fully breastfeeding, the first 56 days are considered infertile. If a woman is partially breastfeeding or not breastfeeding at all, then 27 days after giving birth is the very earliest pregnancy that's ever been recorded. So regardless of whether a woman's breastfeeding or not, if she tracks her fertility, she's able to navigate her way through this period of time and watch her fertility naturally return over time. This is incredibly empowering and enables a woman to avoid pregnancy without resorting to chemicals or anything that can interfere with her milk production, such as the mini pill. Some women do have a problem with continuous discharge throughout the month, and in this case we use a yellow stamping technique to help these women identify the true mucus related to their fertility. For couples using the method to achieve pregnancy, If intercourse is focused on the fertile days, couples should conceive very quickly using this information. We'll show you some statistics later on.
As I began to learn how to chart Catherine's cycles and support her daily observations routine by both of us agreeing at the end of every day what those observations were, etc. And obviously once we were married, really kind of being well motivated about that, I began to learn more about my fertility.
In terms of getting going with the charting, I found that once I'd had my initial appointment with the natural fertility management practitioner, it was really, really simple. That day I began observing and realising there was something to observe, whereas before it had just been my ordinary toileting routine without any thoughts to what was going on. And it really, I really found it very, very accessible, very easy and very simple. And as I've said, once I'd done that a little bit, it got easier and easier. The more the more good habits I got into, it just got easier.
So fertility care charting really enables a couple to monitor and evaluate a whole host of gynaecological health problems, from limited mucus to totally dry cycles, problems with premenstrual spotting, which is when a woman gets very light days before the period properly begins, tail end brown bleeding, when a woman observes brown or very light bleeding at the end of the menstrual flow. The length of the cycle is important, and of course the length of the post-peak phase. And there are many other areas which are evaluated through using this method. By tracking the menstrual cycle, the information that can be gleaned can then be used to treat a whole host of problems, such as subfertility or infertility, problems with recurrent miscarriage, hormone problems such as low progesterone and unusual bleeding patterns, and various other patterns that can actually show up when a woman is tracking her fertility. If women don't track their fertility, they have no idea what underlying problems could be occurring. So days of fertility and infertility become extremely clear. The fertile days are the days of the menstrual flow, potentially, if a woman's having an early ovulation, and the mucus days until 3 days after the peak day. The infertile days are the dry days following the menstrual flow, and from the 4th day post-peak until the next menstrual cycle begins. So couples can use this information in 3 ways: to achieve, to avoid pregnancy, or simply to monitor fertility.
Well, as a lawyer, I obviously work with a lot of other women, and I have had opportunities in the office to share with them the fact that I use natural family planning and how it's helped me, you know, on a personal female level. So that's been great, and there's always a real just interest and I think just fascination that natural family planning is a viable option for today's woman.
How effective is the Creighton model in avoiding pregnancy in couples with normal fertility? This particular study from the Journal of Reproductive Medicine, which has been replicated over and again, involved about 1,800 couples, 5 centres participating, and couple months of use 17,130. The method effectiveness was found to be 99.5%, and the use effectiveness 96.8%. If we look at perfect use and actual use of the Creighton model compared to the pill and condoms, we can see that both with perfect use and actual use, the Creighton model is highly effective and compares very favourably with other methods of avoiding pregnancy. The effectiveness of the Creighton model to achieve pregnancy in couples with normal fertility is also impressive. This particular study shows that in the first cycle of trying to achieve a pregnancy and using what we call fertility-focused intercourse, 3/4 of couples were able to conceive in the first cycle of using the method. By the 3rd cycle, 90% of couples were pregnant, and then within 6 cycles, 98% of couples were able to achieve a pregnancy. This is very helpful information. If couples are not tracking their fertility and trying to achieve a pregnancy, after 6 cycles, if they were to visit their GP, they would be advised to go away and keep trying for a further 6 to 12 months. Certainly, no evaluation would be conducted until a couple have been trying for between 12 to 18 months. However, with using the Creighton model, we know that within 6 cycles of charting, almost 100% of couples should be pregnant. So it's possible to start the process of evaluation and treatment far sooner than were a couple not charting their fertility. This is particularly helpful for couples who are older and have left childbearing until later in life.
As a physiotherapist, it was particularly important for me that the Creighton method is based very much on research and many years of research, and the effectiveness rates of it are so high.
So there are no taking chances with the Creighton model. You will know whether you are fertile or infertile on any given day.
Now that I'm charting, I feel that I can understand myself perfectly. I can go through the month and pretty much guarantee or predict where things might take place, but obviously through observation I can see exactly what's taking place. I feel I'm really in control. I can see when my fertility starts for the month, I can see when the cycle finishes, and I can really tell when I'm ovulating, and it's really, really helpful.
It takes some time, energy and patience, but it's not difficult to learn, and it's an investment in the future. Once you've learned any natural system, you can continue using the method right through until the menopause. The follow-up sessions are extremely important. Firstly, so that the system can be tailor-made to you and your situation. Every woman is different. Every couple is unique. And secondly, so you can gain confidence quickly in the system and start using the method as soon as possible.
You need a number of follow-up sessions because you need to be reminded of all the things that you need to be doing. It gives you the confidence as well to know that you're charting properly, and after a number of sessions you get to a point where you do have the confidence to know what you're doing, and it is quite logical and straightforward.
Of course, success depends on the accuracy of your observations, accurate charting, following the instructions that you're given, the mutual motivation between a couple, and the love and cooperation of a couple.
Well, one thing I've really enjoyed about charting since we got married is the fact that it's a shared responsibility now, and previously I had to obviously fill in the charts every night by myself, but now that's Mike's responsibility, and I have to say I'm charting on a daily basis much more regularly now.
Yeah, it's a really great privilege to be able to do it, but the method is just so good at involving the man, because I'm not just kind of sticking things on a chart. I'm actually there for Leona to bounce questions off of me, to help with interpreting the signs, and for me to actually be able to ask her the questions that she needs me to ask her, just to make sure that we're reading everything right.
The women are the ones that observe throughout the day. Men can play an incredibly supportive role and can actually fill in the chart at the end of each day, but we hope that couples use the system together.
What I'd say to the guys out there is that we are very logical creatures. I'm an engineer myself, and I like things to be in place and in order, black and white pretty much. And what the natural family planning method does is it lays everything out nicely for you so you can see it. I think it's really been good for me to be able to see exactly where my fiancée Sophie is at every time of the month. It's given me much more understanding of how her wonderful body works, and I think it does help you to appreciate them more as well. You go, wow, you really are amazing creatures, these women.
The Creighton model teaches an appreciation of one's fertility and the children that may result from its use one day. But we also believe that women should be active participants in preserving, protecting, and monitoring their own fertility and reproductive health. The Creighton model is critically useful for couples experiencing infertility and for women with reproductive problems such as PMS, polycystic ovary disease, heavy painful periods, or any reproductive problem. It is the main tracking tool that we use within the Naprotechnology medical program.
If there's one thing that I want to say to all the men out there, it's this: that you have got a role to play in tracking your wife's fertility. It's not just for her to do, it's a wonderful, wonderful gift that we're given to be able to share in tracking, and just to share in the joy that comes in it. It's such a wonderful thing.
So I hope you've enjoyed this journey of discovery and are now better able to tune in to your body's own natural fertility function. Hopefully by watching this DVD, you've also gained a sense of the powerful impact the Creighton model can have on your health, well-being and relationship.
This method really helped me to understand my wife and to strengthen our marriage. As a couple, we feel really empowered by what we've learned together.
If there was one thing that I could tell women out there about this natural fertility, I think it has to be to just do it. Whether you're single or in a relationship or married, this is something that you can do for you, and it will just teach you so much about yourself, and it's just such a wonderful gift to really get in touch with your femininity and your cycle. And yeah, there's just a real freedom and a joy that comes with that.
So why not embrace your fertility? It's one of the most natural things in the world.